video, we will look at the concept of charging in ISO20022 messages. As I find it easier to understand new concepts when comparing them to the status quo, I'd suggest we look at what basic options to indicate charging we have in place today in MT messages and compare them to the ISO20022 standard. If we think about what fields provide information about charging or somehow relate to it, we know in MT it's field 32A, 33B, 71A, F, and G. And remember, we only go through the basics here, so we'll not look at FX scenario, for example. Okay, let us start with field 33B. It is called instructed amount both in MT and ISO messages, and it indicates money as instructed by debtor, and it should be unchanged throughout the whole payment chain. Then the field 32A. This field indicates money moved between the sender and receiver of a message. It is called interbank settled amount in MT and is equivalent to the ISO20022 field interbank settlement amount. This amount can change depending whether banks deduct some charges or not. This is what we call deducts, by the way, and you'll see later in the use cases what role these two fields play in charging. But now let's move to the actual charging fields. Field 71A. There we indicate who will pay for the processing of the transaction, who will bear the charges. In order to fill out this field, you have the famous BEN, hour, and SHAR codes that show you whether the beneficiary will cover the costs, BEN, or if the debtor will do that, charge code hour, or if they share the costs, SHAR. Thankfully, ISO20022 messages follow a similar logic, not much difference there. The ISO20022 equivalent of field 71A is a charge bearer element, which also provides you a choice between the codes to indicate the bearer of the charges. As such, BEN translates to CRED, which stands for creditor, hour to debt, debtor or ordering customer, and SHAR to shard, shared. All good and easy so far. The difference appears when it comes to capturing the charges. In MT we have two fields, 71F and 71G, which stand for senders and receivers charges respectively. In ISO20022 messages we don't differentiate it this way. There we only have one element, which is called charges information. This element is however repetitive and can appear in a message several times. What kind of information belongs to this element? Well, besides amount and currency of the charges, you also need to indicate an agent who takes the charges. You know, that's a lot of theory. Why don't we go through the basic scenarios for each of these codes to see how it works? Let's start with BEN or credit charging, where beneficiary or creditor of the payment pays for the processing of this transaction. Let's say debtor sent 100 euros, instructed amount, and the first bank charges 10 euros. How to capture these charges? First, you indicate charge code, BEN in field 71A in MT, and CRED in charge bearer element in ISO20022. Then in MT you indicate field 71F, where you capture the bank's, the sender's charges, namely amount and currency. How do you capture sender's charges in ISO? Well, it's by using charges information element, where you specify amount, currency, but also identification of this agent, for example, BIC. Given that we have deducts here, so the charges taking, they're deducted from the instructed amount, we capture this information in field interbank settlement amount, so 100 euros minus 10 euros charges equals 90. Hope this is clear, and we can move on to the next charge code, SHAR, which indicates that the charges are shared by debtor and creditor. Debtor agent doesn't deduct anything from the transaction. They charge their debtor separately as per agreement, so they only need to indicate the charge code SHAR and the amount of money moved between the agents, 100 euros. Now the charges of the creditor agent are to be paid by the creditor. That means that the bank will deduct these charges from the amount, so the creditor will receive less than instructed. So what does he do? He specifies the charge code SHAR, the instructed amount, 100, the amount and currency of the charges, 10 euros, and its own BIC. And the amount that will eventually arrive at creditors is 90 euros. Now we have only one field that we haven't discussed yet, field 71G, which is used in combination with hour or debt charging only, and it indicates prepaid charges. So charges that are not deducted but are prepaid. So the instructed amount is still at 100. The charge code is debt or hour. But what about money moved between sender and receiver? Well, there you indicate the amount plus the prepaid charges. so 110 euros in total. And now the interesting part comes. In MT, you use field 71G to indicate amount and currency of the charges. In ISO, you use charges information element, where you indicate amount, currency, and here attention, big of the receiver. You see, it's basically the same concept translated into the ISO standard. Thanks for watching.